Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of Jumah Nights. I hope you have enjoyed the last few episodes with regards to the topic of Bara'ah in Islam, and now we would like to move on to another topic with regards to the Ziyarah of Arbaeen. So as we get closer to the time of Arbaeen, most of our friends will be going to begin their walks from Najaf to Karbala, where they will be joined by millions in walking towards the master of existence, al-Hussain. And in the second part, in the Jum'ah reflections for this week, we'll be speaking about the connection between the Ziyarah of Arbaeen and the Imam of our time. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So today we want to discuss the Ziyarah of Arbaeen and its virtues, and we're going to do that in the following stages. The first point we're going to discuss are the criteria for being recognized as a mu'min, as a believer in the Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam. And the second point will be with regards to the virtues of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. The third will be the philosophy of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. And number 4 will be the obligation of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. So if we take a look at a very well-known narration of Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, it is originally mentioned in Tahdhib al-Ahkam, but I'm reading here from the 98th volume of Bihar al-Anwar by Shaykh al-Majlisi. He narrates that Imam al-Askari said that the signs of a mu'min are 5. He says, Salat ihda wa khamseen. He says, the one who prays 51 rak'ah in a day. Those are the wajib salawat, the nawafil, and obviously salatul layl. And all of them together, they add up to 51 rak'ah. Was Ziyarat Arbaeen, and the Ziyarah of Arbaeen of Imam Hussain. وَاتَّخَذْتُمْ بِالْيَمِينَ, and to wear a ring on their right hand. وَتَعْفِيرُ الْجَبِينَ, which is to place the forehead on the earth. وَالْجَهْرُ بِبِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ, and to say the basmala out loud in our salawat that are wajib. So in this narration, you can already see the importance that has been placed on the Ziyarah of Arbaeen, because it is mentioned as one of the signs of a mu'min, a signs of the believer. We can see that this Ziyarah of Arbaeen, it mentions it in a general sense, so it extends across the visitation of the grave of Imam Hussain at the time of Arbaeen. And if we are not able to do that, then at the very least we should be able to recite the Ziyarah of Arbaeen of Imam Hussain, and that would be an indicator of you being a mu'min as a Shi'i. If you are able to recite the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain on the day of Arbaeen, the believer should never miss this opportunity. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to speak about the virtues of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam in Karbala. And I'm going to be reading a few narrations from this book, Kamil al-Ziyarat, which was written by Ibn Qawlawayh, and is one of our classical texts and most authentic books of ahadith and ziyarat. And I would recommend everybody to familiarize themselves with this work. And there are a lot of virtues of each of the ziyarat of the imams in this book, and more specifically, of course, the ziyarah of Imam Hussain. So if we look at the page 149, we have a narration from Abi Basir, who is one of the companions of Imam Sadiq. He says, سمعت أبا عبد الله وأبا جعفر يقول. He says, I heard Imam Sadiq and Imam Baqir say, من أحب أن يكون مسكنه الجنة ومأواه الجنة فلا يدع زيارة المظلوم. He says, whomsoever wishes for his residence to be Jannah and for his end goal to be Jannah, then he should not leave the ziyarah, the visitation of the oppressed one, of the madloom. فلا يدع زيارة المظلوم. قلت ومن هو? So the companion Abi Basir, he asks, who is this person for whom which their visitation would equal the end goal being paradise? Imam Sadiq responds saying, قال al-Hussain bin Ali صاحب كربلاء من أتاه شوقا إليه وحبا لرسول الله وحبا لأمير المؤمنين وحبا لفاطمة أقعده الله على موائد الجنة يأكل معهم والناس في الحساب. He says it is Imam al-Hussain bin Ali, who is the Sahib of Karbala. Whomsoever comes towards him, yearning for him, and out of their love for Rasulullah, for their love for Amir al-Mu'mineen, and for their love for Fatima Zahra alayha salatu wasalam, Allah will seat him on the boundaries of Jannah, where they will be eating with the members of Ahlulbayt, while every other person will be waiting for their judgment, and they'll be waiting for their sins to be counted and their good deeds to be counted. This is the fadhil of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. He gives a few conditions. These are the only conditions that you would need in order to be from these people on the Day of Judgment. He says, Man atahu shawqan ilayh, those who yearn for Imam al-Hussain. Which of us do not yearn to be with Imam al-Hussain on his ziyarah and next to his grave? This is a sign of a mu'min in itself. As we mentioned in the previous narration, one of the signs of a mu'min is the Ziyarah of Arbaeen, right? And we can see that across the narrations of Ahlulbayt, one of the essential characteristics of the Ahlulbayt is that the mu'mineen love them. We see the narrations where Imam Ali said that even if I was to hit a mu'min on his head, he would never hate me, right? Because this is an essential part of the fact of them being the Imam and the Hujjah of Allah upon earth, that the mu'mineen love them, right? So it says here, whomsoever comes towards him, yearning for him, shawqan ilayh, and out of his love for Rasulullah, his love for Amir al-Mu'mineen, and his love for Fatima Zahra alayhi salatu wasalam. Here we can see he has mentioned the three Imams of the Imams. These are the highest statuses out of the Ahlul Bayt. Coming to the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain is a show of your love for Rasulullah, for Amir al-Mu'mineen, and for Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salatu wasalam. So you can see here the great fadl and the virtue of the one who does this ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain. We find in another narration on page 152 of the same book, Kamil Ziyarat, we have a narration mentioned from Harun ibn Kharija, from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Harun asks Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, قال قلت, I asked, جعلت فداك, may I be sacrificed for you. ما لمن أتى قبر الحسين زائرا له عارفا بحقه يريد به وجه الله تعالى والدار الآخرة. He says, what is the virtue and what does someone receive for coming to the grave of Imam al-Hussain as a za'ir to him, as a visitor to him, عارفا بحقه, knowing of the rights of Imam al-Hussain, يريد به وجه الله تعالى والدار الآخرة, and he only wishes from that the face of Allah, the way and the path of Allah and the hereafter. فقال له, Imam al-Sadiq said to him, Ya Harun, O Harun, من أتى قبر الحسين زائرا له عارفا بحقه يريد به وجه الله والدار الآخرة غفر الله له ما تقدم من ذنبه وما تأخر. He says, O Harun, whomsoever comes to the qabr of Imam al-Hussain, to the grave of Imam al-Hussain as a visitor towards him, عارفا بحقه, knowing of his rights, he only wishes for the face of Allah, for the path of Allah, and the hereafter, Allah forgives all of his sins, that which he has done and that which is to come. A lot of Muslims, they feel that, or they know that this virtue is for the Hajj, right? A lot of people don't know actually that the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain actually holds that same fadl, in that whomsoever is to do the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain, arifan bihaqihi, knowing of the Imam's rights, then all of his sins are forgiven, that which he has done before and that which is to come in the future. And the Imam, he tries to place emphasis on this. He says, Alam ahluf lak, have I not sworn this to you? He says this 3 times. I've sworn this to you 3 times. Whomsoever does the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, knowing of his rights, then all of his sins are forgiven. Everything that he's done before and that which is to come. And the Imam swears by Allah with regards to this. And the level of sincerity that is mentioned in this narration, we see that the Imam emphasizes on this also. Yuridu bihi wajhullah. He wants from this the face of Allah, the path of Allah. A lot of the time we see in these latmiyat that is mentioned, for example, on the path of Allah, ilallah, for example. And some people have a problem with this. They say, how can you say that you're going towards Allah? This is shirk. This is against Islam, and this is not the right beliefs to have. But this is what the Imam is saying. In fact, this is where you find Allah. This is the face of God that you go to look at when you go to the Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. So we find another narration very similar to the one before, where a companion of Imam al-Sadiq, he's asking the same question. We have here Abdullah ibn Maymun al-Qaddah. He asks Imam al-Sadiq, قلت له ما لمن أتى قبر الحسين زائرا عارفا بحقه. What is the reward of somebody that comes to the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain knowing of his rights? قال, Imam al-Sadiq responded, يكتب له ألف حجة مقبولة. He says, it is written for that person 1,000 hajj that is accepted in the eyes of Allah. وألف عمرة مبرورة, and the reward of 1,000 umrahs. وإن كان شقيا كتب سعيدا. He says, and if he is an immoral person, he'll be written as a person of glad tidings. وَلَمْ يَزَلْ يَخُوضُ فِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ, and he will never cease to remain in the mercy of Allah. You can see here that the Imam, he is showing that through the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, people change. This is the most beautiful virtue of Imam Hussain and his Ziyarah. We can see here, the Imam says, وَإِنْ كَانَ شَقِيًّا كُتِبَ سَعِيدًا. If he was to be an immoral person, someone who is cursed or he is unlucky, he is going to be from the lucky ones, right? This is a change in that person's state. This reminds you of Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. On the day of Ashura, he comes in the morning as someone who is shaqi, and he gains martyrdom in the form of someone who is sa'id, who is lucky, who is somebody now who we look up to, and we wish that we could have been Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi on the day of Ashura. But we have that chance every time we go to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. It could be that for the past year we have been sinful, we have been disobedient to Allah. But through the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, if we come to him knowing of his rights and understanding the importance of that Ziyarah, it can change your life. Imam Hussain can completely turn your life upside down. He can make you from the greatest of individuals, from the worst of people. And you'll remain in the mercy of Allah, which is characterized by the mercy of Imam al-Hussain. So in those narrations that we read, very often you see this clause for the acceptance of your ziyarah and all the rewards that are to follow that. They all mention عارفاً بحقه, to know the importance and the rights of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. This ziyarah as it in itself, it acts as a wasila to gain the ma'rifah of the Imam, of the Imam al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. And the ma'rifah of Imam al-Hussain is the ma'rifah of the Imam of our time. And the ma'rifah of the Imam of our time is the ma'rifah of Allah. As Imam Ali says in the first sermon of Nahj al-Balagha very famously, the foremost thing in the religion is Allah's ma'rifah. And we read in the lines of Ziyarat Jamia al-Kabira, we say, وَمَنْ عَرَفَكُمْ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ اللَّهِ. Whomsoever has cognizance and he understands you, the Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam, he has cognizance of Allah. And that is the goal and the thing that we aspire to by doing the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. This is another explanation with regards to the Ziyarah towards Wajhullah, the journey towards Allah. And that is the same journey that we undertake when we leave from the Haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen and we go towards the Haram of Imam al-Hussain in Karbala. This is the journey towards God, the journey towards the face of Allah. And this is an opportunity for the Shia to focus their energy on so many levels. And this is the philosophy of the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain, where we are able to come together as a community to mourn about Abdullah al-Hussain. And we've already spoken in the previous episodes with regards to the mission and the aims of Imam al-Hussain when going to Karbala, and the long-term aims of that relating to the Imam of our time, and how it will be the Hussainiyun, those who have severe love for Imam al-Hussain and our understanding of his huquq are ones with ma'rifah of Imam al-Hussain. They are the people that will rise at the time of Imam al-Mahdi with the slogan, Ya latharat al-Hussain, oh for the revenge of Imam al-Hussain. And this is the point of the ziyarah. This is where we are able to come together as one in order to achieve that aim. This is an opportunity for us to really see that opportunity and that aim of the Imam of our time, so that we can be part of that nest, that Hussaini nest that Imam al-Hussain has placed so carefully for us to grow into and to become the supporters of the Imam of our time. And it's perhaps for this reason that you don't see the same level of emphasis on any of the ziyarat of the Imams or the Ma'sumeen like you see the emphasis for the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain. Is because of that close link between Imam al-Hussain and Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salatu wasalam. That close link and those aims of Ahlulbayt that are achieved through these two individuals, right? Imam al-Hussein's ziyarah is something that uplifts you spiritually. It mends you when you are broken. It makes you sad and it makes you comfortable all at the same time. It is when you're standing next to that dharih of Imam al-Hussain where you feel the closest to the Imam of your time and the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we spoke in the previous episodes with regards to the reasons for Hajj, right, there was a big social aspect to that, right? The community coming together in order to see the nation of Muslims and for them to gather in one place. And Imam al-Hussein's ziyarah is no different, right? It extends also to that. And then secondly, the athar of Rasulullah that are mentioned in when we go for Hajj, right? Here we see the athar of Imam al-Hussain also. We see the maqamat of Ali al-Asghar, of Ali al-Akbar. We see the grave of al-Abbas. And here we are able to feel a strong connection with the martyrs of Karbala, those people who had reached the highest level to the point that Allah sends His salam upon these individuals. These are our role models, and that's why when you come into the land of Karbala, you already have that feeling in your heart, a broken feeling in your heart. You know that this is the land upon which Imam al-Hussain, he stood alone. Right? And when you go for the Ziyarah of Arbaeen, you can see that this is the same land upon which Imam al-Hussain, he stood alone, and now he rests in a grave surrounded by millions. Right? You see thousands and thousands of people, in the hundreds of thousands, standing in baynul haramayn, calling out, Labbayka ya Hussain, Labbayka ya Hussain. And what is important here is not just the calling of Labbayk ya Hussain. What is more important than that is how many of those calling Labbayk ya Hussain have understood the rights of the Imam of their time, have understood the rights of Imam al-Hussain, and are ready to truly act in those words that they are saying. When they say Labbayk ya Hussain, their actions should reflect what they say on their tongues, and that is what Imam al-Hussain wants from us, and the Imam of our time wants from us. When we say Labbayk ya Hussain, let that be something that remains with us and translates into our actions, so that the khidmah that we are doing with regards to Imam al-Hussain, when we go to the majalis and we recite these latmiyat, when we do the latam for Imam al-Hussain, when we cry for Imam al-Hussain, we're allowing that service and that mourning for Imam al-Hussain translate into something that is greater and actually helps to accomplish the mission of Imam al-Hussain and the aims of Imam al-Hussain in us supporting the Imam of our time and actually coming for the revenge of Imam al-Hussain with our awaited savior, Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salatu wasalam. And that is the philosophy of the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain, in order to prepare us and to make us ready, right? It's that emotion, that raw emotion that all of us feel that needs to translate into something greater. You know that raw emotion is not coming from you. That's not you. You know that when you sit on Ashura and you're crying and you have severe emotion for Imam al-Hussain, you know that isn't something that's just coming from you. That is something that is coming from the ghaib. That is something that you can't explain. How can we cry so much for individuals that passed away 1,400 years ago? There is no way that you would be able to do that without there being an element of the unseen, something greater than yourself. And we all feel that on the day of Ashura. We all feel that in our hearts and in the depths of our souls. And it's that same unseen energy that we need to ensure that we are able to translate into the service of the Imam of our time. And this is why this same philosophy of the support of the Imam of our time, the ma'rifah that we have to have towards the Imam of our time, is an amr that is wajib, something that is obligatory upon all Shia, to be arifan bi Imam zamanihi, to be one that has ma'rifah of the Imam of his time. That's why we find that the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain is such an important tool in this, and we can see that obligation of being aware of the Imam of your time extends to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. And that's why we have so many narrations speaking about the obligation of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. We see on page 130 of Kamil Ziyarat, we have a narration from Abdurrahman ibn Kathir. He narrates from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, who says, if one of you was to do Hajj for his whole life, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَزُرْ al-Hussain ibn Ali, and he was not to do the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, he would be leaving one of the rights of Rasulullah. He would be taking away a right of Rasulullah that Rasulullah has upon you. لأن حق الحسين فريضة من الله واجبة على كل Muslim. He says, because the haqq of Imam al-Hussain upon the believer is a obligation from Allah and wajib upon every single Muslim. You see here, he mentions the obligation of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. It's not something that we should be putting on a lower level when we say, okay, cool, the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, we'll go when we have time. No, this is something that you should be actually really trying your best to go to, because this is an obligation. The same way that Hajj is an obligation for the person who is able to go, the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, here it has been mentioned as an obligation upon every Muslim. There's a level of emphasis here that cannot be emphasized enough. Then we have another narration from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, from Muhammad ibn Muslim. He says, Murru shi'atana bi ziyarati qabr al-Hussain. Our Shia pass by and continuously go to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. فَإِنَّ إِتْيَانُهُ يَزِيدُ فِي الرِّزْقِ. He says, coming towards the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, to the grave of Imam Hussain, it increases in your provision, in your rizq. It will increase in your wealth, right? The providence that Allah gives to you will increase through the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. وَيَمُدُّ فِي الْعُمْرِ. And it will increase in your lifespan. وَيَدْفَعْ مَدَافِعَ السُّوءِ. And it will take away the bad things that may happen to you in the future. It will take them away from you. وَإِتْيَانُهُ مُفْتَرَضٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُؤْمِنٍ يُقِرُّ لِلْحُسَيْنِ بِالْإِمَامَ مِنَ اللَّهِ. He says, and coming towards the grave of Imam Hussain is an obligation upon every believer who believes Imam Hussain to be an Imam from Allah. You see here again, this is a indication towards the arif and bihaqihi. This is part of being arif and bihaqihi. Understanding that the one who considers Imam Hussain to be an Imam, part of that belief in Imam Hussain is that you believe that the ziyarah towards him is an obligation upon you. This is something that you place as a priority in your mind. We have a narration again from Imam al-Sadiq, also from Harun ibn Kharija, the same companion that we read his narration a few moments ago, on page 201 of Kamil Ziyarat. He says, قال سألته عمن ترك الزيارة زيارة قبر الحسين بن علي من غير إلا. He says, I asked Imam al-Sadiq about the one who leaves the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain without any reason, right? You are able to go to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain and you just don't go for whatever reason. You're like, I might want to go on a holiday, I don't know, to Turkey or Egypt instead of going to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. And I'm able to go and I haven't been to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. What is the status of someone like this? Imam al-Sadiq says, هذا الرجل من أهل النار. This person, he's from the people of hellfire. This is again another indication of the obligation of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. Whomsoever is able to go to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, he should go. It's an obligation, right? Then we have a narration from Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur, who mentions that he heard Imam al-Sadiq speaking to one of his lovers, one of the Shia of Imam al-Sadiq. The Imam asks him, Ya Fulan, atazuru qabra Abi Abdullah al-Hussain ibn Ali, alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, O person, do you do the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain? He responded saying, yes, I do the Ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain. Between 3 years, every 3 years, I go to visit Imam al-Hussain at least once. The Imam became angry with him. He said it says that the Imam responded with a yellowish face. He got a bit upset by the answer of that person. The Imam responds by saying, Ama wallahi alladhi la ilaha illa hu, law zurtahu lakana afdal laka mimma anta fi. He swears by Allah. He says, by Allah, if you were to do his ziyarah, then it would have been greater for you than what you are actually doing right now, right? So he's saying, I go to visit Imam Hussain every 3 years, right? It's possible that in between those years, he's doing something else. He's giving priority to something else over the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. The Imam responds by saying, if you were to do his Ziyarah more often, it would be greater than what you are doing instead of that. So that person, he's confused. He's like, I do the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain every 3 years, at least once, right? Like, surely that's as much as I need to do. So he asks Imam al-Sadiq, he says, جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ أَكُلُّ هَذَا الْفَضْلِ. Is that the level of virtue and the merit of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain? Imam al-Sadiq, he says, نَعَمْ وَاللَّهِ. He says, I swear by God, yes, this is how much virtue it has. لَوْ أَنِّي حَدَثْتُكُمْ بِفَضْلِ زِيَارَتِهِ وَبِفَضْلِ قَبْرِهِ لَتَرَكْتُمُ الْحَجَّ رَأْسًا وَمَا حَجَّ مِنْكُمْ أَحَدٍ. He says, if I was to tell you about the virtues and the merit of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, I swear by Allah, none of you would have ever done Hajj again. None of you would have been able to do Hajj knowing that the virtue of Imam al-Hussein's ziyarah is so high. You would have left the Hajj completely. Yeah, this is the level of virtue that the Imam is giving and the emphasis that he's giving to that person to make sure that he goes and he keeps doing the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain. The Imam says, وَيْحَكْ أَمَا تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ اتَّخَذَ كَرْبَلَاءَ حَرَمًا آمِنًا مُبَارَكًا قَبْلَ أَن يَتَّخِذَ مَكَّةَ حَرَمًا. He says, woe be unto you, do you not know that Allah took Karbala as a sanctuary, a safe sanctuary, a blessed sanctuary, even before he took Mecca to be a blessed sanctuary? And this is something we find in the narrations that are in multiple narrations, speaking about the fadhil of the land of Karbala in comparison to all of the other lands around the world, right? We have a narration very famously is mentioned that the Ard of Mecca below the Kaaba, yeah, which is referred to as al-Qura, right? It is referred to as al-Qura because it is the earth from which all of the other earth around the world was made, right? So there's a narration that says that al-Qura, the land or the earth beneath the Kaaba, it had a level of pride, right? It felt that, that I am the greatest land. And there was a call from the skies that says to the land of al-Qura to calm down. And it tells the land of al-Qura that Karbala is greater than you, right? So we find that hadith across the hadith of Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam, and the importance and the blessed nature of this blessed land of Karbala. And that's why when we do our salawats and the turba that we pray on, we try to ensure that it is from the land of Karbala, because it is the most blessed soil. And it is a blessing to have that even in our houses. And I'm sure that the blessing that soil brings to your houses is something that cannot be understated whatsoever. So to conclude, we have spoken about the level of importance, the virtues that are assigned to the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, the obligation of the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, and most of all, the philosophy of the Ziyarah. How does this Ziyarah need to actually translate into our actions, into service towards the Imam of our time? And that is the most important part of this Ziyarah, right? The reason why it has been made obligatory, the reason why it has been emphasized on and the virtues are so great, is because the expectation from the Imams is that when you go towards this Ziyarah, towards the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain, you go understanding of his rights, understanding of his aims, understanding of the rank of Imam Hussain and his mission, right? And with understanding that mission, inshallah, we can be from the supporters of Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salatu wasalam, and those who take the revenge for every drop of blood of Imam al-Hussain, as we call out, Ya litharat al-Hussain. So for this week's Jumah reflections, we have decided to do something a little bit different. As we're coming closer to the time of Arbaeen, I want to actually discuss a prophecy that was made by none other than our fourth Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, with regards to the very ziyarah and the very walk that we undertake from Najaf to Karbala. So we have a narration from Imam Sajjad in volume 98 of Bihar al-Anwar, page 114. It is a narration from Sahifat al-Rida, where Imam al-Rida narrates from his fathers, right? So this is the golden chain of narrations. Imam al-Rida, he narrates from Imam al-Kadhim, who narrates from Imam al-Sadiq, who narrates from Imam al-Baqir, who narrates from Imam al-Sajjad. Imam al-Sajjad says, the narration says, قال علي ibn al-Hussain عليه السلام كأني بالقصور وقد شيدت حول قبر الحسين. He says that it is as if I can see that I am in well-constructed buildings, high buildings, and they have been constructed around the qabr of Imam Hussain, right? You have to bear in mind, Imam Sajjad, he's speaking in a period of time, first of all, where the Shia are very small in number, right? The grave of Imam Hussain is in Karbala, it's in a desert. There's literally barely anybody there. Karbala is a desert at this point. And Imam Sajjad, he's saying, it's as if I can imagine that I am in high buildings that have been constructed around the qabr of Imam Hussain. وكأني بالأسواق قد حفت حول قبره فلا تذهب الأيام والليالي حتى يصار إليه من الآفاق. He says, and it is as if I am in the marketplaces, and people have gathered in great numbers around his grave. فَلَا تَذْهَبُ الْأَيَّامُ وَاللَّيَالِي, such that not a day or night will pass except that people will come towards the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain from above and beyond the horizons. وَذَلِكَ عِنْدَ انْقِطَاعِ مُلْكُ بَنِي مَرْوَانَ, and that is when the reign of Banu Marwan will end, and this is where the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain will become such that the days and the nights will not pass except that people come from beyond the horizon. So you can see here Imam Sajjad, he's speaking about a time that you can see that these words have become a reality in our time, in the time that we live in today, right? This is something that could not even be imagined at the time of Imam Sajjad. You have to think, Karbala is a desert, right? There is literally no buildings, no marketplaces, nothing, right? And Imam Sajjad is saying that I can imagine myself being in high buildings, right? Constructed around the grave of Imam Hussain, right? And you can see that today. And he says, I can imagine myself in the marketplaces, yeah? And people have gathered around the qabr of Imam Hussain, and people will come from beyond the horizons, and that will be at the time where the reign of Banu Marwan will end. And some of the scholars, they have kind of interpreted this hadith, and they've advised that, of course, because we don't find that this phenomenon has actually occurred in the history of Shia Islam in the way that it is happening now, they have likened Banu Marwan to the Ba'athi regime, and there are many other narrations by which they characterize these specific characteristics that Banu Marwan are described to have, and the similarities between them and the Ba'athi regime. But that is just an opinion that I thought I would share. So we can see here that Imam Sajjad, he has actually prophesized this level of ziyarah, this level of visitation from beyond the horizon. We have another narration also in Bihar al-Anwar in volume 41, page 287, and this one is found in Uyun Akhbar al-Rida, also from Imam Rida, who narrates here from Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? So, and this is the same, it's the same narration also attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says, كَأَنِّي بِالْقُصُورِ قَدْ شُيِّدَتْ حَوْلَ قَبْرِ الْحُسَيْنِ. The same line that Imam Sajjad said, I can imagine that I am in high buildings that have been built and constructed around the qabr of Imam Hussain. وَكَأَنِّي بِالْمَحَامِلِ تخرج من الكوفة إلى قبر الحسين. And it is as if I am in caravans that I have left from Kufa, and Kufa includes Najaf, right, towards the qabr of Imam Hussain. And this is another indication with regards to the ziyarah that we do in the time of Arbaeen. We walk from Najaf to Karbala, where in the history of Islam or the history of humankind have we seen that these words have applied so much as they do today? And he carries on and he says the same lines, وَلَا تَذْهَبُ اللَّيَالِ وَالْأَيَّامِ حَتَّى يُسَارُ إِلَيْهِ مِنَ الْآفَاقِ. And the days and nights will not go except that people will come from beyond the horizons for the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain. How many countries do the people come from now to do the Ziyarah of Imam Hussain? The Shia of Imam Hussain are in Australia, are in Canada, are in the places that we live now, in the UK, in places in Europe, and we come from beyond the horizons to see our king, the master of existence, Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. If we think about it, how many people have ruled Iraq? Right? We had the Banu Umayyah. Where are they now? There's no mention of them. Banu Abbas. Where are they now? There's no mention of them. The Seljuks. Where are they now? There's no mention of them. The Mongols. There's no mention of them. But Hussein remains Hussein. He remains the king of existence and the king of that land, who people will continue to visit from beyond the horizons, as prophesied by Imam Sajjad and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhima as-salatu was-salam. We also find in other narrations with regards to the zuhur of the Imam of our time, this mentioning about Banu Marwan and Banu Abbas being there at the end of times. And of course there's a lot of interpretations and explanations with regards to those ahadith, but I just wanted to draw your attention to the idea that this is mentioned in the narrations of the zuhur of the Imam of our time. So here when it says وَذَلِكَ عِنْدَ انْقِطَاعِ مُلْكُ بَنِي مَرْوَانَ, that is when the reign of Banu Marwan will end. This is showing us that this is in the lead up to the reappearance of the Imam of our time, Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salatu wasalam. And all of these concepts with regards to the ziyarah and the marketplaces and the caravans leaving from Najaf to Karbala and the high constructed buildings around the qabr of Imam Hussain, they act as a prophecy but also are in line and are part of the events leading up to the dhuhr of the Imam of our time. So this prophecy acts as two things. Like I said in the first part of the episode, this is an opportunity, this ziyarah, in order for us to increase in the ma'rifah of the Imam of our time. So this is a wake-up call. When we see these prophecies, we need to take that as a wake-up call for us to actually start preparing for the Imam of our time. We need to feel like the time is now. We've become almost too complacent in awaiting the Imam of our time. We say, we make the dua for the faraj, we make dua for him to reappear, but there isn't a translation of our words in our actions, right? And this is the time now. It is now or never for us to ensure that we have prepared ourselves for the Imam of our time and his blessed reappearance. I hope that's been a beneficial episode for you, and I know that Jum'ah Reflections this week has been a little bit different, but coming up to the event of Arbaeen, we felt that it was necessary to make sure that we are speaking about contemporary times, but of course also in light of the narrations of the Ahlulbayt with regards to the prophecies that they have about the end of times. So I hope that's been a beneficial episode for you, and I hope to see you again next week, where we'll be continuing our series with regards to Arbaeen, and we'll be speaking about the efforts and the legacies of Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Sajjad. I'll see you again next week for that topic. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.